August 15, 2019, the Fontainebleau basement auction room held 47 of the world's most dangerous people. Victoria Romano sat in the back corner, bidding on stolen Picassos like any other wealthy collector. She'd kept her mouth shut for 30 years. That changed when Isabella Vega laughed about Frank Capone. The brother was even weaker than Alphonse, Isabella announced to the room. Died like a scared dog in the street. Every eye in that basement watched Vicky stand up, the woman who'd spent 3 decades hiding her bloodline, the granddaughter who'd sworn never to speak the family name. Isabella had no idea what she'd just awakened. What happened in the next 3 minutes ended a 30-year truce between Chicago and Miami. 5 crime families called emergency meetings. And for the first time since 1947, someone whispered the name Capone with genuine fear. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The hook. The silence stretched like a blade across skin. Victoria Romano remained standing, her manicured fingers still resting on the back of her chair, watching Isabella Vega's smirk falter. The cartel queen had expected laughter, perhaps a few nods of agreement from the assembled criminals. Instead, the basement felt like a tomb. "Excuse me," Vicky said, her voice carrying the polished authority of 3 decades practicing law in Chicago's most dangerous courtrooms. "I believe you misspoke." Isabella's dark eyes narrowed. She was younger, maybe 40, with the kind of beauty that came from excellent surgeons and better bodyguards. 2 of those bodyguards shifted behind her chair now, hands moving toward concealed weapons. "I don't misspeak, abuela," Isabella replied, the Spanish endearment dripping with condescension. "Frank Capone died running from the law like a coward. History remembers." A muscle twitched in Vicky's jaw. She'd perfected her poker face defending Chicago's worst monsters, but something ancient and furious stirred in her chest. Frank Capone died in a firefight with 20 police officers. He took 3 bullets to the chest and kept shooting until his gun was empty. He died on his feet. The room's temperature seemed to drop. Several of the other auction attendees exchanged glances. These were people who understood the weight of family honor, the price of disrespect. They recognized the shift in the air, the way predators sense blood. Isabella laughed again, but it sounded forced now. "You seem very invested in dead gangsters, Signora. Perhaps you should stick to buying pretty pictures." That's when Vicky made the choice that would shatter 30 years of careful anonymity. She stepped forward, moving between the folding chairs with the grace of someone accustomed to command. Her silver hair caught the harsh fluorescent lighting, and for just a moment, anyone who'd studied photographs of the Capone family might have noticed something familiar in the set of her shoulders, the way she carried herself. "Frank Capone was my grandfather's brother," she said clearly, her words carrying to every corner of the concrete room. "And you will show his memory proper respect." The silence that followed was deafening. Then, slowly, like dominoes falling, the implications rippled through the crowd. Victoria Romano, the art dealer who'd appeared in Miami 15 years ago with impeccable credentials and unlimited funds. The woman who'd purchased pieces from half the criminals in this room without ever asking uncomfortable questions about provenance. Al Capone's granddaughter. Isabella's face went white beneath her carefully applied makeup. "That's impossible," she whispered. "The bloodline died out. There's no family left." "My mother was very discreet," Vicky replied. She preferred raising her daughter in anonymity rather than constantly looking over her shoulder. A wise choice, as it turns out. Markus Volkov, the Russian arms dealer seated near the front, turned completely around in his chair to stare at her. The Yakuza representative in the silk suit had gone very still. Even the auctioneer, a nervous Swiss banker who specialized in moving stolen art, had frozen with his gavel halfway to the podium. Isabella stood now too, her earlier confidence cracking. "You're lying. You're some nobody art dealer playing dress-up with the big boys. Alphonse Capone's granddaughter wouldn't be sitting in some hotel basement buying—" "Stolen Picassos?" Vicky finished. "Why not? My family understood the value of beautiful things. We also understood the importance of showing respect to our elders and our dead." She took another step forward. The movement was casual, unthreatening, but something in her bearing made Isabella's bodyguards tense like coiled springs. "Here's what's going to happen," Vicky said, her voice dropping to a conversational tone that somehow felt more dangerous than shouting. "You're going to apologize, to the room and to the memory of Frank Capone. You're going to acknowledge that you spoke without knowledge or respect." Isabella's nostrils flared. "I don't apologize to anyone, especially some old woman with delusions of—" The crack of Vicky's hand across Isabella's cheek echoed through the basement like a gunshot. The Cartel queen stumbled backward, more from shock than force, her hand flying to her face. "That," Vicky said calmly, "was for Frank. Would you like to find out what happens if you insult Alphonse?" For a moment, violence hung in the air like smoke. Isabella's bodyguards had their hands on their weapons now, but they were looking uncertainly at their boss. Everyone in the room understood they were witnessing something unprecedented. A challenge issued, a bloodline revealed, a sleeping giant awakened. Isabella touched her reddening cheek, her eyes bright with rage and something that might have been fear. "You have no idea what you've just started, old woman." Vicky smiled then, and it was her grandfather's smile, charming and absolutely terrifying. "No, mija. You started this when you decided to run your mouth about family you don't understand. I'm just finishing it. The 30-year truce between Chicago and Miami died in that moment, though none of them fully realized it yet." The first thing Vicky noticed when she stepped out of the Fontainebleau's service elevator was the salt air cutting through Miami's perpetual humidity. Her hands were steady, a lawyer's hands, accustomed to high stakes, but her heart hammered against her ribs like a caged bird. 30 years of careful construction, and she'd demolished it all in under 5 minutes. She walked through the hotel's marble lobby without seeing the tourists or the late-night revelers spilling out of the bar. Her mind replayed Isabella's shocked expression, the weight of 20 pairs of eyes calculating her worth, her weaknesses, her potential. By morning, every criminal organization from Moscow to Mexico City would know that Al Capone's granddaughter was alive and living in Miami. The valet brought her Bentley without comment, though she caught him studying her face in the rearview mirror as she pulled away. Even he sensed the shift, the electricity that clung to her like expensive perfume. She drove south on Collins Avenue, past the Art Deco hotels and the clubs where cocaine still changed hands in bathroom stalls, her grandfather's city sprawling before her in neon and shadow. The house in Coral Gables sat behind 8-foot walls topped with bougainvillea, the Spanish colonial architecture designed to suggest old money rather than old violence. Vicky had bought it in 1993 with funds from her mother's estate, funds that had originally been wrapped in oilcloth and buried in Chicago dirt 60 years earlier. The irony wasn't lost on her, Capone money buying respectability in the city where he'd died. She parked in the circular drive and sat for a moment, listening to the engine tick as it cooled. Through the master bedroom window, she could see light still burning. Marcus would be waiting, probably reading one of his archaeology journals, pretending not to worry when she stayed out past midnight attending art acquisitions. Dr. Marcus Chen, 64 years old, professor emeritus of classical studies at the University of Miami, widower, collector of ancient Roman coins and early jazz records, the man who'd spent 8 years loving her without ever asking why she sometimes woke up screaming, why she kept emergency passports in 3 different names, why she insisted on installing a security system that could have protected a small embassy, the kind of man who would never forgive her for the lie she'd been living. Vicky closed her eyes and saw her mother's face, Maria Romano, born Maria Capone in a Chicago boarding house in 1921, the product of Alphonse's brief liaison with an Irish seamstress. Beautiful, terrified Maria, who'd spent her entire adult life looking over her shoulder, jumping at car backfires, teaching her daughter to shoot before she could properly tie her shoes. "Never tell them who you are," her mother had whispered on her deathbed, her fingers clutching Vicky's hand with surprising strength. "Promise me. They killed them all, Bambina, one by one. They'll kill you too if they know." But her mother had never explained who they were. Federal agents? Rival families? Someone else entirely? The mystery had haunted Vicky through law school, through her years defending Chicago's modern monsters, through her careful migration to Miami, and her painstaking construction of Victoria Romano, art dealer and respectable citizen. Now she'd thrown it all away for Frank's memory. The front door opened before she could reach it. Marcus stood silhouetted against the warm light of the foyer, his silver hair mussed from reading, his wire-rimmed glasses reflecting the porch lamp. He wore the ratty University of Chicago t-shirt she'd bought him as a joke, and the sight of it made her chest constrict with something approaching panic. "How was the auction?" he asked, stepping aside to let her pass. His voice carried the slight accent of childhood Mandarin, softened by 50 years in American universities. "Interesting," she managed, setting her purse on the marble-topped console table. Her grandmother's purse, actually. Capone family antique filled with modern necessities and a Walther P99 that she'd never told Marcus about. He studied her face with the careful attention he usually reserved for pottery shards and ancient inscriptions. "You look like you've seen a ghost." "I am the ghost," she thought. "I'm the ghost that should have stayed buried." "I'm fine," she said, but her voice cracked slightly on the second word. Marcus stepped closer, his hand warm against her cheek. "Victoria, what happened?" She wanted to tell him. God help her, she wanted to confess everything. About Chicago, about the blood money that had bought this house, about the safety deposit boxes containing her grandfather's journals and her mother's paranoid warnings, about the fact that the woman he'd been sleeping beside for 8 years was a lie built on older lies, stretching back to speakeasies and Tommy guns and bodies in Chicago concrete. Instead, she kissed him, tasting toothpaste and worry, memorizing the feeling of being held by someone who still believed she was worth saving. When they broke apart, his eyes were questioning but patient. Marcus had always been patient. "Come to bed," he said softly. "Whatever it is, it can wait until morning." But Vicky knew that morning would bring consequences he couldn't imagine. Isabella Vega would not let this stand. The revelation would spread through criminal networks like wildfire. And somewhere out there, the people who had hunted her family would learn that their work wasn't finished. She followed Marcus upstairs anyway, her hand trailing along the banister, touching the life she was about to lose. The call came at 3:17 a.m. Vicky had been lying awake beside Marcus, listening to his steady breathing and the distant hum of Miami traffic, when her secure phone, the one only 3 people in the world knew about, buzzed against the nightstand. She'd been expecting Isabella's retaliation, some crude message or threat delivered through intermediaries. Instead, the caller ID displayed a number she hadn't seen in 15 years. A Chicago number. Her hand trembled as she slipped from bed, padding silently to the bathroom and closing the door before answering. "Victoria Romano." Her voice came out steady despite the ice spreading through her veins. "Bambina." The word hit her like a physical blow. Only one person had ever called her that with such tender familiarity, and that person had been dead for 30 years. Uncle Sal? The name escaped as a whisper. "You thought I was dead." Salvatore Torino's voice carried the weight of 8 decades, roughened by cigarettes and secrets. "Your mother did a good job selling that story. Had to, after what happened to the others." Vicky gripped the marble countertop, her knuckles white in the bathroom's soft lighting. Sal had been her grandfather's lieutenant, her mother's protector, the man who'd taught 7-year-old Vicky how to play poker and spot a tail. He'd supposedly died of a heart attack in 1993, the same year her mother passed. "This isn't possible," she breathed. "A lot of things ain't possible, kid. Like Al Capone's granddaughter slapping a cartel queen in front of half the hemisphere's criminal elite." His laugh was bitter. "You got brass, I'll give you that. Just like your grandfather. Also, just like him, you don't think before you act." The bathroom suddenly felt too small, the walls pressing in like a confession booth. "How do you know about tonight? Bambina, I got people everywhere. Been watching you for 30 years, making sure you stayed invisible. You just painted a target on your back the size of Lake Michigan." Vicky's reflection stared back from the mirror, silver hair disheveled, brown eyes wide with the kind of fear she hadn't felt since childhood. "You've been watching me? Protecting you. There's a difference." Sal's voice softened slightly. "Your mother, God rest her soul, she was terrified they'd find you. Made me promise to keep you safe, even if it meant you'd never know I was alive. Who's they, Uncle Sal? The question that had haunted her for 3 decades spilled out in a rush. Mom never told me. She just said they'd killed the others, that they were hunting the bloodline. A long pause. In the background, she could hear traffic that sounded distinctly like the Loop, horns and diesel engines, and the particular acoustic signature of buildings too tall and too close together. The Torino name don't mean what it used to, Sal said finally. But there are still people in this world who remember old debts, people who think Al's blood money belongs to them, people who've been very patient, waiting for the right moment. What people? FBI? The outfit? Worse. His voice dropped to a gravelly whisper. Family, Bambina. Your mother had a sister. The world tilted. Vicky sat down hard on the closed toilet seat, her legs suddenly unable to support her weight. That's impossible. Mom was an only child. Grandfather only had the one daughter. Your grandfather had 2 daughters, Maria and Sophia, twins. Sal's words cut through her protests like knife through paper. Sophia disappeared in 1942, right after Al died. We thought she was dead, maybe grabbed by enemies, maybe just ran off. Turns out she was building something. Something that makes Isabella Vega look like a corner store shoplifter. Vicky's hand found the bathroom door frame, anchoring herself to something solid. Building what? An empire, kid. Started with Al's money, the real money, not just what your mother managed to grab. Sophia knew where all the bodies were buried, literally and figuratively. She's been using that knowledge for 80 years, building a network that spans continents. And she's been hunting down every other heir to make sure she's the only one left standing. The pieces clicked together with horrible clarity. Her mother's paranoia, the mysterious deaths of distant cousins over the decades, the way Maria had changed her name, burned bridges, disappeared into suburban anonymity. She killed them, Vicky whispered. All of them, every last one. Except you, because your mother was smart enough to fake your death when you were 12. Sophia thinks you died of pneumonia in 1963. Through the bathroom door she could hear Marcus stirring in bed, probably wondering why she'd been gone so long. Her perfect, peaceful life lay on the other side of that thin barrier, and on this side waited the truth that would destroy everything. Until tonight, Sal continued relentlessly, when you announce to a room full of criminals exactly who you are. Sophia's going to know within hours that her last living relative just crawled out of the grave. The secure phone felt heavy as a weapon in her trembling hand. Vicky's reflection stared back from the bathroom mirror, a 62-year-old woman watching her carefully constructed world crumble in real time. This has to be a mistake, some kind of... No mistake, Bambina. Sal's voice carried the weight of decades. I wish to Christ it was. She pressed her back against the cool bathroom door, a barrier between 2 lives. Then I'll disappear again. New name, new city. I've done it before. Sal's harsh laugh made her flinch. You think it's 1963? You think you can just vanish in a world with cameras on every corner, facial recognition, digital footprints? Besides, after tonight's performance, every wise guy from here to Sicily knows your face. There has to be something. Kid, listen to me. His voice turned urgent. Pack a bag. Tonight, get your professor and get gone. I got a place in Wisconsin, off the grid. Maybe we can... The line went dead. Vicky stared at the phone's blank screen, her heart hammering. She tried calling back, but the number was already disconnected. Uncle Sal, who'd survived 8 decades in a business that buried most men before 40, had just been silenced mid-sentence. A soft knock on the bathroom door made her jump. Vicky? Marcus's voice, thick with sleep and growing concern. Everything okay in there? She forced her voice steady. Just couldn't sleep. Be out in a minute. But when she opened the door, Marcus was studying her with the sharp attention that had made him one of the university's most respected researchers. He noticed details others missed. The tremor in her hands, the way she'd gone pale, how she clutched the phone like a lifeline. Who was that? He asked quietly. Wrong number. The lie tasted like ash. At 3 a.m? On your private line? Marcus knew about the secure phone, though he'd never asked why a retired art dealer needed one, just like he'd never questioned her fluency in street Italian, or why she could pick locks, or the way she automatically cataloged exits in every room they entered. 8 years of willful blindness, and now his scholarly instincts were finally awakening. "Marcus, please, I just need—" Her regular phone buzzed on the nightstand, then buzzed again, and again. They both stared as message after message flooded in. Clients, colleagues, contacts from the art world, all sending variations of the same thing, photos from the auction, videos taken on phones, her name, her face, spreading through networks she'd spent decades cultivating. Victoria Romano, Al Capone's granddaughter? Holy shit, V, is this real? Girl, you've been holding out on us. The Romano Art Gallery connection finally makes sense. Marcus picked up the phone, his face growing paler with each message. Victoria. The name came out strangled. What is this? What were you doing at an underground auction? She wanted to lie, to deflect, to buy herself time to think. Instead, she found herself studying his face, the kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, the mouth that had whispered endearments in 3 languages, the hands that had traced her scars without ever asking how she'd gotten them. "The Rothko you love so much," she said finally. "The one hanging in your study? It was stolen from a Jewish family in 1943. I bought it from a man who'd murdered the previous owner to get it." Marcus set the phone down carefully, like it might explode. "What?" "The Monet in the dining room. The Picasso sketches in my office. Half the collection, Marcus. I've been laundering stolen art for 30 years. Each word felt like a small death. That's what I do. That's who I am." He took a step backward, his shoulders hitting the bedroom wall. "You're telling me you're a criminal?" "I'm telling you I'm Al Capone's granddaughter." The truth hit the air between them like a slap. "My mother was Maria Capone. She raised me to survive in a world that wanted our family dead. The art dealing, the money, this house, it's all built on blood." The silence stretched between them like a chasm. Outside, Miami hummed its late-night rhythm, oblivious to the destruction happening in this bedroom. Marcus stared at her as if seeing a stranger. "8 years," he whispered. 8 years, and you've been lying about everything?" "Not everything." Her voice broke. "Not about loving you." But Marcus was already shaking his head, backing toward the door. I can't." He stumbled over the words, this man who could recite Virgil in perfect Latin, but couldn't find language for betrayal this complete. "Marcus, please." Don't. He held up a hand, stopping her approach. "Just don't." He grabbed clothes from the dresser, moving with jerky mechanical motions. Vicky watched him pack a bag, each folded shirt another nail in the coffin of their life together. "Where will you go?" she asked. "The university has guest quarters. I'll figure it out." He paused at the bedroom door, his back to her. Was any of it real? The question hung in the air like smoke from her grandfather's cigars, acrid and impossible to escape. "All of it," Vicky whispered to the empty room, but Marcus was already gone. The sound of his car pulling out of the driveway felt like the period at the end of her life's longest sentence. She stood in the bedroom doorway, surrounded by the debris of their shared existence, his reading glasses on the nightstand, the coffee mug she'd bought him in Rome, the photograph of them at last year's faculty dinner where she'd smiled and played the perfect academic's companion while lying about everything that mattered. The secure phone buzzed again, different number, but she recognized the Miami area code. Her hands shook as she answered. "Romano." "Quite a performance tonight." Isabella Vega's voice was silk wrapped around a blade. "Though I must admit, I had no idea I was insulting royalty. What do you want, Isabella?" A conversation, face to face, 1 hour. The marina behind the Fontainebleau. A pause filled with malicious satisfaction. "Unless you'd prefer I share what I've learned with certain interested parties in Chicago, I'm sure Sophia Torino would be fascinated to know her dear sister's daughter is still breathing." The line went dead before Vicky could respond. She stared at the phone, ice spreading through her chest. If Isabella knew about Sophia, then Uncle Sal's worst fears were already coming true. The Cartel Queen had connections that reached into places even the FBI couldn't penetrate. Vicky moved through the house like a sleepwalker, each familiar room now feeling like a museum of someone else's life. The kitchen where Marcus had made her breakfast every Sunday. The study where they'd read together in comfortable silence, the garden where he'd proposed with her grandmother's ring, the only honest piece of jewelry she'd ever worn. She found herself in the walk-in closet, pushing aside evening gowns to reveal the hidden panel she'd hoped never to open again. Her fingers remembered the combination even after all these years. Inside, 3 passports, $50,000 in cash, the Walther P99, and a leather journal bound with a rubber band. Her mother's journal. Vicky had read it only once, the night after Maria's funeral, and then locked it away like the dangerous thing it was. Now she opened it to a random page, her mother's careful handwriting swimming before her eyes. Sophia came to see me today. Victoria was at school, thank God. She looks exactly the same, not a day older than when she vanished. That's impossible, but then everything about my sister has always been impossible. She knew things, personal things about our life here that no one should know. She offered protection, said the old enemies were stirring again. All I had to do was tell her where Papa hid the real treasure. I said no. I'll always say no. Some prices are too high even for safety. The journal entry was dated 6 months before her mother's death. 6 months before what everyone assumed was a stroke, but that Vicky now realized might have been something else entirely. She flipped to the final entry, written in a shaking hand she'd attributed to illness. She's coming. I can feel it. If something happens to me, Victoria must never know the truth about what Sophia has become. Better she think herself alone than know what her blood truly carries. The Capone curse didn't end with Papa's death, it evolved, and Sophia made herself its avatar. A sound from downstairs froze Vicky's blood, the distinctive click of the front door opening, followed by soft footsteps on marble. She'd changed the locks after Marcus left, but locks had never stopped anyone who really wanted inside. Vicky closed the journal and slipped it into her jacket pocket along with one of the passports. The Walther felt heavy and familiar in her hand as she eased out of the closet, muscle memory from childhood lessons taking over. Uncle Sal's voice echoed in her mind, "Never hesitate, Bambina. In this life, hesitation gets you killed." The footsteps were climbing the stairs now, deliberate but unhurried. Whoever it was wasn't trying to hide their presence. They wanted her to know they were coming. Vicky pressed herself against the bedroom wall beside the doorway, gun raised, and waited. The footsteps paused outside her door. A shadow fell across the threshold. "Hello, Victoria." The voice was her own but not her own, like hearing yourself speak in a dream. A woman appeared in the doorway, moving with predatory grace. She looked 40, maybe 45, with dark hair and the distinctive Capone jaw. Beautiful in the way dangerous things were beautiful. Impossible in the way nightmares were impossible. "Aunt Sophia," Vicky breathed. The woman, who should have been 91 years old, smiled with teeth that belonged on someone who'd never aged a day past her prime. "You've grown up beautifully, niece, though you have your mother's unfortunate habit of pointing guns at family." The Walther trembled in Vicky's grip. "My mother said you were dead, missing, evil." Sophia stepped into the bedroom like she owned it. Maria always was dramatic, though I suppose keeping you hidden for 30 years required a certain flair for theater. "How are you? How do you look? Young?" Sophia's smile widened. "Oh, my dear child, there's so much you don't know about what our grandfather really left behind. The money was nothing. The real inheritance was something far more valuable. The weight of her mother's secrets, her grandfather's legacy, and her own shattered life crashed down on Vicky like a building collapse. She kept the gun trained on her impossible aunt and realized that everything, absolutely everything, had been a lie. Put the gun down, Victoria. We're family." Sophia moved deeper into the room, her gait fluid and confident despite the weapon trained on her chest. "Besides, bullets can't solve what's wrong with your life." "Stay back!" Vicky's voice cracked like a teenager's. The Walther might as well have been made of paper for all the authority it gave her against this impossible woman. "Your mother never told you, did she?" Sophia settled onto Marcus's side of the bed with casual familiarity, smoothing the comforter he'd made that morning, about what Papa really discovered in those final years, the connections he made, the bargains that kept him alive when everyone wanted him dead. Grandfather died of syphilis, in prison. Sophia's laugh was musical and terrible. Oh, sweet child. Syphilis was the cover story. The real cause of death was much more voluntary. She picked up Marcus's reading glasses from the nightstand, examining them with mild interest. Tell me, how did your professor take the news about your heritage? The casual invasion of Marcus's space, the way Sophia handled his belongings like she owned them, sent rage coursing through Vicky's chest. Get away from his things. He left you, didn't he? Poor Victoria, always abandoned by the men who claimed to love her. Sophia set the glasses down with deliberate precision, just like your father abandoned your mother, just like Papa abandoned us all when he chose death over transformation. You're talking in riddles. Am I? Sophia stood, moving to the window that overlooked the garden where Marcus had proposed. Your mother told you Papa hid money, didn't she? A fortune that would set you free. But money runs out, Victoria. Money gets spent or stolen or inflated away to nothing. What Papa really left was the secret of forever. The words hung in the air like smoke. Outside, dawn was beginning to creep across Miami's skyline, painting everything in shades of blood and gold. That's impossible. Is it? Sophia turned from the window, and in the morning light, her face looked exactly like the photographs Vicky had seen of her mother at 25. I've been building our family's empire for 80 years, watching, waiting, eliminating threats to our bloodline while you played house with your art dealers and professors. The journal in Vicky's pocket felt like it was burning through the fabric. Her mother's words echoed. Sophia made herself its avatar. You killed them, the other descendants. I protected our legacy from weaklings who would have squandered it. Sophia's voice hardened. Do you know what your precious Uncle Sal was planning to do? Hide you in some cabin in Wisconsin like a frightened rabbit. Pathetic. The casual mention of Uncle Sal made Vicky's blood freeze. What did you do to him? What I had to do. Just like I did what I had to do with Maria when she refused to see reason. Sophia's smile was sharp as broken glass. Though I must admit, watching you slap Isabella Vega was illuminating. Perhaps you have more Capone fire in you than I thought. The room tilted. The words hit Vicky like physical blows, rearranging everything she thought she knew. You killed my mother? I offered her immortality, partnership in something greater than either of us could achieve alone. She chose to protect a secret that was never hers to keep. Sophia moved closer, seemingly unconcerned with the gun. But you, dear niece, you have a choice to make. Join me and claim your birthright, or join the rest of our family in their graves. Vicky's finger tightened on the trigger, but her hands were shaking too badly to aim properly. You're insane. I'm eternal. There's a difference. Sophia was close enough now that Vicky could see the predatory intelligence in eyes that were exact mirrors of her own. Isabella Vega thinks she can threaten a Capone? She's about to learn that some bloodlines run deeper than death itself. The revelation crashed over Vicky like a tidal wave. Her mother hadn't died of a stroke. Uncle Sal hadn't died protecting her location. Every death, every disappearance, every moment of paranoia in her childhood, all of it led back to this woman who claimed immortality while wearing her sister's face. You've been hunting us for decades, Vicky whispered. Your own family. I've been preparing us for something greater. Sophia reached out as if to touch Vicky's cheek, and the gesture was so reminiscent of her mother's tenderness that it made her stomach turn. The question is, darling niece, are you ready to stop running from what you really are? Through the bedroom window, Vicky could see Marcus's empty parking space in the driveway. Her perfect life lay in ruins. Her protector was dead, and her mother's killer stood 3 feet away wearing the face of family. The weight of 30 years of lies settled on her shoulders like a funeral shroud, and Vicky finally understood that she'd never really escaped anything at all. The gun fell from Vicky's nerveless fingers, clattering onto the hardwood floor like a punctuation mark to her surrender. But instead of the defeat Sophia clearly expected, something else took root in the silence, a cold, crystalline clarity that felt like her grandfather's ghost whispering in her ear. You're right, Vicky said quietly, not moving to retrieve the weapon. I have been running. Sophia's predatory smile widened. Finally, some sense from running from the wrong things. Vicky's voice grew stronger, drawing from reserves she'd forgotten she possessed. "I should have been hunting you." The smile faltered slightly. Sophia's hand, still extended toward Vicky's cheek, hesitated in midair. "Careful, niece. Grief makes people say foolish things." "Does it?" Vicky stepped back, putting the bed between them, her mind suddenly, brutally clear. "Tell me about this immortality of yours, Aunt Sophia. Because you look 45, not 91. Either you've made some very impressive deals with very dark powers, or—" She let the sentence hang, watching Sophia's face. The predatory confidence flickered for just a moment, long enough for Vicky to see what lay beneath it. Desperation, the kind of manic need that came from maintaining an elaborate fiction for too long, or "you're not really my aunt at all." The words hit the air like a gunshot. Sophia's carefully constructed composure cracked, revealing something feral and afraid underneath. "You don't know what you're talking about." "Don't I?" Vicky pulled her mother's journal from her jacket, holding it like a talisman. My mother was thorough in her record-keeping, including photographs, birth certificates, family trees that go back 5 generations. She opened the journal to a page she'd memorized decades ago. Sophia Capone died in 1962, pneumonia. She was 63 years old and buried in Hillside Cemetery in Chicago. Grave marker 47B. The woman claiming to be her aunt went very still. Outside, Miami was waking up, traffic humming, birds calling, life continuing its normal rhythm, while Vicky's world reshattered and reformed around this new truth. "Who are you?" Vicky demanded. "I'm family," the woman said, but her voice had lost its musical quality. Now it sounded hollow, desperate. "Blood calls to blood, Victoria. You feel it, don't you? The connection between us?" "I feel something." Vicky closed the journal, never taking her eyes off the imposter. "But it's not kinship. It's recognition. You're like Isabella, aren't you? Someone who's built their entire identity around other people's legends." The mask slipped further. The woman's face contorted with rage and something deeper, a bottomless hunger that had nothing to do with family loyalty. "You think you understand, but you don't. You can't. The power that flows through the Capone name, the fear it still commands, that should belong to someone who appreciates it, should belong to you." "Yes." The word came out like a hiss. "I've earned it. Decades of work, of building networks, of eliminating the weak links that would have diluted our legacy. While you played art dealer and housewife, I was forging an empire that would make Al Capone look like a corner store owner." The pieces clicked into place with devastating clarity. "You've been using our family's reputation to build your own criminal organization, killing the real descendants so no one could expose you as a fraud. They were wastes of space. Sal with his hiding and his cowardice. Maria with her suburban dreams and her desperate normalcy." The woman's voice turned vicious. "At least you have some fire in you. That display at the auction showed potential." Vicky felt something shift inside her chest, not the ice-cold fear that had defined the last few hours, but something warmer and infinitely more dangerous. Her mother's voice echoed from childhood lessons. "Never let anyone trade on what they haven't earned, Victoria. Respect is currency, and thieves deserve what thieves get." "Isabella Vega insulted my great-uncle's memory," Vicky said softly. "But you've been desecrating my entire family for decades." The imposter sensed the change in atmosphere, the way predators recognize when prey became something else entirely. She took a step back, her hand moving toward something concealed in her jacket. "Don't." Vicky's voice carried new authority. Not the desperate fear of a cornered victim, but the quiet command of someone who'd finally stopped running from their nature. "You wanted to see what I really am? You're about to find out." She moved toward the fallen Walther with deliberate calm, and for the first time since entering the bedroom, the woman claiming to be Sophia Capone looked genuinely afraid. "The meeting with Isabella," Vicky said, picking up the gun with steady hands. "You arranged it, didn't you? Your little protege." Outside, a car door slammed, then another. Through the window, Vicky could see black SUVs pulling into her driveway, but she was no longer the frightened woman who'd hidden in closets and changed identities. She was Al Capone's granddaughter, and she had family business to finish. The imposter's hand froze halfway to her concealed weapon as Vicky's transformation completed itself. Gone was the trembling art dealer who'd been terrorized for the past 12 hours. In her place stood someone who carried herself with the same lethal grace that had once made Chicago's streets run red. Isabella was never the real threat, was she? Vicky kept the Walther trained on the woman's chest while her mind worked through the implications. She's just another puppet, young, ambitious, desperate to prove herself worthy of inheriting power she could never earn. Perfect for your purposes. The sound of car doors slamming grew louder, footsteps on gravel. The imposter's eyes flicked toward the window, and Vicky saw calculation there, weighing odds, measuring distances, planning escape routes. You made one critical mistake, Vicky continued, her voice carrying the same quiet authority Uncle Sal had wielded during their childhood lessons. You assumed I was like my mother, that I'd run when threatened, hide when hunted. She took a step closer, and the imposter actually flinched. But Maria Romano was born Maria Capone, and she didn't raise a victim. The cartel soldiers downstairs are your insurance policy. I understand. Vicky's smile was sharp as winter. But here's what you never learned about my grandfather's real legacy. It wasn't immortality or mystical power or any of the fairy tales you've been peddling. It was something much simpler and infinitely more dangerous. She could hear voices now through the bedroom door. Spanish mixed with accented English, Isabella's voice rising above the others, giving orders with the brittle authority of someone who'd never been truly tested. The real secret, Vicky said, her finger steady on the trigger, was that Al Capone understood something fundamental about power. It's not about the fear you inspire, it's about the loyalty you earn, and loyalty can't be stolen or faked or murdered into existence. The imposter's mask finally cracked completely. Without the predatory confidence, she looked exactly like what she was, a middle-aged woman who'd built her entire identity around someone else's ghost. You don't know what forces you're dealing with. The network I've built, the connections. Built on lies, connected through fear. Vicky could hear footsteps on the stairs now. How long did you think it would last? How long before someone like Isabella decided she didn't need a pretender when she could claim the throne herself? The realization hit the imposter like a physical blow. Her face went white as she understood the trap she'd walked into. She wouldn't dare. She already has. Vicky gestured toward the approaching sounds with her free hand. You arranged this meeting to eliminate me, the last real descendant. But Isabella's not here to follow your orders anymore. She's here to tie up loose ends, all of them. The bedroom door exploded inward as armed men in tactical gear poured through. Isabella Vega followed, resplendent in black leather and chrome, her own weapon drawn with practiced ease. Behind her came figures Vicky recognized from the auction, cartel lieutenants and enforcers who'd watched the confrontation that started this nightmare. Well, well. Isabella's voice carried satisfaction and something deeper. The hunger of someone who'd finally decided to claim what she believed was rightfully hers. Both of my problems in one convenient location. The imposter spun toward Isabella, desperation replacing calculation. This wasn't the plan. We agreed to nothing. Isabella's smile was cold as January in Chicago. You served your purpose, Sophia. 30 years of playing ghost while I built real power. But legends belong to those strong enough to claim them. Vicky watched the interplay with fascination, her gun still trained on the woman who'd murdered her mother. The careful dynamics of criminal partnership dissolving into the oldest story in the world. Student surpassing teacher, protege eliminating mentor. You made one mistake, Isabella, Vicky said quietly, her voice cutting through the tension like a blade. The same one she made. Isabella's attention snapped to her, dark eyes glittering with amusement. And what's that, Princessa? You assumed the Capone name was something you could take. Vicky's smile was her grandfather's smile, the one that had made grown men confess their sins before the bullets flew. But it's not a crown you wear. It's blood you're born with. The room went deadly still. Even the imposter seemed to hold her breath as the weight of Vicky's words settled over them like a shroud. Outside, dawn was breaking over Miami, painting the bedroom in shades of gold and crimson. And blood, Vicky continued, her voice carrying the authority of 4 generations of Capone legacy. always tells. In that moment she was no longer Victoria Romano hiding from her heritage. She was Victoria Capone claiming it. The transformation was complete, irreversible, and absolutely terrifying in its quiet finality. The war for her family's legacy was about to begin. The gunshot came from behind Isabella, sudden and sharp in the morning air. One of her own lieutenants lowered his weapon as the cartel queen crumpled to the bedroom floor, her eyes wide with surprise and betrayal. "Pardon, Jeffa," the man said quietly, "but respect is earned, not stolen." The room erupted into chaos as loyalties fractured along invisible lines. Some of Isabella's men turned their weapons on each other, while others simply backed toward the exits, unwilling to die for a woman whose ambition had finally exceeded her reach. The impostor scrambled for cover behind the dresser, all pretense of supernatural authority abandoned in favor of simple survival. Through it all, Vicky stood perfectly still, her grandfather's ghost whispering approval in her ear. She'd done nothing but speak the truth, and the truth had been enough to shatter 30 years of careful deception. When the smoke cleared, 3 people remained standing in the blood-spattered bedroom. Vicky, the lieutenant who'd fired the killing shot, and the woman who'd murdered her mother. "You killed them all," the impostor gasped, staring at the carnage with horrified fascination. "No," Vicky said softly. "They killed each other. That's what happens when loyalty is built on lies. It collapses the moment someone offers a better fiction." She kept the Walther trained on the woman's center mass. "The only question now is what to do with you." The lieutenant, a weathered man in his 50s with intelligent eyes, holstered his weapon. "With your permission, Senora, I have men waiting to clean this up. Isabella's remaining territory will need management." Vicky studied him for a long moment, recognizing something she'd seen in Uncle Sal's old associates, the kind of respect that couldn't be manufactured or stolen. "And you think that management should fall to a Capone?" "I think," he said carefully, "that some names carry weight because they've earned it, not because someone claimed it." The admission hung in the air between them, heavy with possibility. Vicky could see the path he was offering: step into the empire Isabella had built, use the respect her grandfather's name still commanded to forge something new from the wreckage of old ambitions. But when she looked around the bedroom, at Marcus's belongings scattered and violated, at the blood soaking into hardwood floors where they'd made love just days ago, all she felt was tired. "The woman behind the dresser killed my mother," she said simply. "After that, I'm retiring from the family business, permanently." The lieutenant nodded as if he'd expected nothing less. "And her?" Vicky walked to where the impostor cowered, the Walther steady in her hands. The woman who'd stolen her aunt's identity looked up with eyes that held no supernatural power, no immortal authority, just the desperate fear of someone who'd finally run out of other people's reputations to hide behind. "Please," she whispered, "I can give you information. Networks, connections, money hidden in accounts across—" "I don't want your money." Vicky's voice was gentle, almost kind. "I want my mother back. I want Uncle Sal back. I want 30 years of my life back." She crouched down until they were eye level. "Can you give me any of those things?" The woman shook her head, tears cutting tracks through expensive makeup. "Then you have nothing I need." The second gunshot was quieter than the first, muffled by proximity and finality. When it was over, Vicky set the Walther on the dresser next to Marcus's reading glasses and walked to the window overlooking the garden where she'd once believed in forever. 2 hours later, she sat on Miami Beach, watching the sunrise paint the ocean in shades of gold and crimson. The lieutenant had been efficient. The house was clean, the bodies gone, the official story already being crafted by men who understood the value of careful silence. In her purse was a business card with nothing but a phone number, should she ever change her mind about retirement. She wouldn't call. Victoria Romano, art dealer and professor's girlfriend, was dead. Victoria Capone, heir to a legacy of blood and violence, had been born and buried in the same morning. What sat on the beach now was something else entirely. Someone who'd looked into the heart of her family's darkness and chosen to walk away from both the power and the poison. Her phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. "I'm sorry I ran. Can we talk?" Vicky deleted the message without responding. Some bridges, once burned, should stay that way. Not out of cruelty, but out of mercy for both of them. The sun climbed higher, warming her face as tourists began to claim their spots on the sand. Normal people living normal lives, blissfully unaware that Miami's criminal landscape had shifted beneath their feet while they slept. By evening, she was on a plane to Seattle, carrying nothing but her mother's journal and a new name. Behind her, the Capone legacy settled back into legend where it belonged, and the woman who might have claimed it disappeared into the crowd like smoke dissolving into sky.